Nintendo is a fascinating company. They're probably the single most important company in the history of video gaming. They revolutionized the way we think about and even play games more than once. They built some of the most recognizable franchises in the world, and most importantly, they made many games that brought joy to the life of millions of people. Nintendo is simply an amazing company, and honestly, I wouldn't want to live in a world without Mario or Zelda or Slowpoke. But, and that's a huge but, not everything Nintendo did over the years has been brilliant. For every fantastic Mario sequel that Nintendo made, there is also a time where they stubbornly drove a franchise into the ground for no reason at all. For every time the Zelda series made a revolutionary design choice, there is also one time where they made a design decision so stupid that it ended up actively harming them. And for every time they came up with something brilliant and revolutionary, like Slowpoke, there is also one time where they completely got stuck in the past for absolutely no reason. So today we're going to take a look at my personal favorite and totally subjective, most dumb and disastrous, stupid things Nintendo ever did in their history list. So you ready? Let's do this! Alright, so in order to find out why our first disastrous design decision was so unbelievably dumb, we have to enter a time capsule and travel to the year 1998. So it's 1998. Titanic is running in the cinemas, a weird product with a business model that no one really understands, called Google goes live, Bill Clinton did not have a sexual relationship with this woman, and video games, well, video games are having quite a year. So 1998 is generally considered to be one of the most important and influential years in video gaming history. Just to give you an idea of how strong 1998 was, it was the year Ocarina of Time released, alongside with Baldur's Gate, Banjo-Kazooie, Half-Life, the first StarCraft, Resident Evil 2, the first Metal Gear Solid, and F-Zero X. It is even the year the original Pokemon games released in the US. But one key figure of gaming is strangely missing in this list. What was Mario doing during those glorious days of 1998? Well, Mario was still recovering from all the trauma he had to endure during Mario 64. And what better way to recover than by having a party? So for everyone who doesn't remember what a party was anymore, it was basically when different people from different households came together. Honestly, it was kind of weird. So the original Mario Party releases in 1998, and it is the original Mario Party that features the first catastrophic decision that Nintendo made. So at first glance, there is nothing wrong with the game. There are many different and fun boards to play in. The game features 50 minigames, most of them are great fun, and there is even a separate minigame island that looks a bit like the overworld in Super Mario World, but instead of featuring fun little platforming stages, the levels here feature the different minigames. Mario Party's minigame island was a ton of fun back in the day, and honestly it's a feature that I would have loved to see more often in the sequels. The minigame island isn't the problem here. The problem are 3 of the minigames that we have to beat on the minigame island, because beating those 3 minigames is a rather painful experience. So the 3 disastrous minigames are Tug of War, where one player plays tug war against the other 3, it's Pedal Battle, where one player has to pedal against the others, and it is Pedal Power, where a single player has to activate a lightning bolt by pedaling for their life before a boo catches them. So what does those 3 games have in common? Well, they are all won by rotating the joystick really fast. The thing is the following, those minigames were really hard to win on the minigame island. The input for all 3 of them is basically just to rotate the joystick in circles. But normal joystick rotating was just too slow to win on the minigame island. If we really wanted to win, we had to come up with a better way to rotate the joystick. A more drastic way. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is when disaster struck. Because the by far best strategy to win those minigames was it to take the joystick, to put our palm on top of it, and to rotate that thing, as if there was no tomorrow. So the Nintendo 64 joystick has a really hard and rough surface, while also not being the most sturdy inputting mechanism ever designed, and rotating the stick like a madman with the whole palm on top of it in order to win this dumb tug of war game led to 2 things. So first, it wore the joystick insanely fast. Like honestly, one day the joystick was working flawlessly, and then after only a couple of hours of Mario Party, it was a broken mess. The spring that puts the stick back into its original position just wasn't built to withstand the stress test that a single game of Pedal Battle objectively was. But the second problem is that drastically rotating the joystick with the palm like that causes pain. The mix of the Nintendo 64 controller being really uneven combined with the heat that rotating the stick produced led to it causing huge blisters if we were lucky, and actual combustions if we were not. The by far best strategy to win those minigames was it to, well, to burn off the skin of your palm while rotating the joysticks. A strategy that, of course, hundreds of thousands of kids gladly used, as long as it meant that they did not lose against their so-called friends. So it is probably time to come clear about this. I am a victim. I suffered tremendously because of Mario Party's joystick rotation madness. Not only did I completely destroy at least one of my older brother's N64 controllers, but I was also running around with those huge blisters. It was insanity, honestly. Like, there was that 1 month in my school where you could tell whose parents bought their kids a PlayStation for Christmas and who got a Nintendo 64 just by looking at their right palms. Like, we Nintendo kids, we would stand there like idiots, a burning pain in our palms, barely able to even hold a glass of milk, discussing the best strategies on how to convince our parents to buy us a new Nintendo 64 controller. While the PlayStation kids would stand in that corner, laughing at us, pointing at us with their two perfectly fine hands, trying to comprehend Metal Gear Solid story or something. Oh, those PlayStation kids were such losers. So how does the story end? Well, it ends like most of those stories do. It ends with a settlement in front of a court. Around 90 worried parents filed complaints against Nintendo. Nintendo ended up paying $75,000 in legal fees, as well as settling to provide everyone who bought the game with a glove. So the cost of providing a glove for the 1.2 million people that bought a copy of the original Mario Party at this time is estimated to be around $80 million, though they definitely did not send a glove to every suffering kid, since at least I never received mine. But the decision to design minigames in Mario Party where the dominant strategy was to hurt yourself ended up being quite a dumb and costly decision nonetheless. Alright, so let's take a look at the second catastrophic decision that Nintendo made over the years. So in order to understand why our next decision is so catastrophic, we have to travel back in time once more, and we have to take a look at what gaming looks like in 2011. So 2011 is another really interesting year in gaming. It's the year Portal 2 releases and Mass Effect 2. It's the year Skyward Sword releases and Nintendo 3D Land, the original Dark Souls comes out, and Bethesda re-releases Skyrim for the... You sure about that? Oh! Bethesda actually released Skyrim in 2011. If we take a look at the most critically acclaimed games of 2011, everything looks as we would imagine it. Skyrim and Batman Arkham City share the first place, with games like the Ocarina of Time remake, Skyward Sword and Mass Effect 2 close behind. At first glance, everything looks normal, but that is only if we stay at the surface of this list. Because if we begin to dig deeper, we stumble upon something weird, something that hasn't really happened up until then, something new and honestly, something quite scary, because hidden in the middle of all the franchises by all of our favorite publishers are weird games. Games that don't have a clear publisher behind them. Games made by small teams with almost no budget. Games like Limbo that released a year earlier and is now successfully making its way onto more platforms. Games like Bastion that provide a kind of experience that AAA games just never do. And games like Minecraft that have been successfully building up to a 1.0 release. Games that are seeing sales that match or sometimes even exceed the sales of expensively produced AAA games. Around 2011 is the time when indie games start to become really mainstream. So the question is, how do Nintendo, Sony and Microsoft react to this sudden and drastic shift in gaming? Well, they react in different ways. Basically, Sony and Microsoft are willing to embrace it. They gladly sell those new and scary indie games in their online stores. There are a bunch of hiccups here and there, but overall they understand that indie games are also a chance for them. Sometimes they even experiment with offering them advertisement space during one of their big events. And Nintendo? Well, Nintendo is really worried about development kits getting stolen. Nintendo completely sleeps on the rising indie game market. They have policies in place that make it insanely hard for small independent developers to release on the Wii Store. Just as an example, one of the requirements to be allowed to release on the Wii Store was to have an office address that did not match your home address. So any team that scrambled together an amazing game in their garage was straight up not allowed to release their game on any Nintendo platform for the simple reason that they scrambled it together in a garage instead of in an office, like a real developer would. The reason why they insisted that every game developer has to have an office was because they were worried that their development kits could be stolen, something that apparently does not happen in offices. And that is just one of the many unnecessary hurdles that indie developers that wanted to release on a Nintendo platform had to deal with. There were unit thresholds in place, there was horrible communication, basically Nintendo just completely slept on the exploding indie market. But it's not only that they didn't see the earthquake coming, they actually acted incredibly arrogant. In 2011, the back then president of Nintendo of America, Reggie Fils-Aimé, gave an interview at the GDC where he said, "We are not interested in working with garage developers." Asked about the statement by IGN in another interview a bit later, he doubled down. Okay, so IGN basically asks Reggie what a garage developer is for him and where he draws the line. He first talks a bit about how there are of course independent developers that Nintendo is willing to work with, but, and I'm quoting from here on, again, where we try and draw the distinction is that there are people who want to be in this business but don't have the training or experience. All we're saying is, great, go get that experience and come back to us once you have more knowledge and more capacity within the industry. It's like the guys at 2D Boy who worked at a large publisher, World of Goo was stuck in the back of their head, they wanted to bring it to life. We were fortunate enough to bring that to the Wii. So that's the distinction we make. And yeah, I've seen all the reports and the reaction, but candidly, the reaction is by folks who don't really understand the nature of the comments and don't really understand the nature of the business. It took Nintendo 2 years to realize their mistake. By 2013, indie games are mainstream. There are games out there that were coded by a bunch of guys in a garage that rival or even succeed the sale numbers of AAA Nintendo releases. The PlayStation 4 and the new Xbox just released and their lacking first-year library is really enhanced by indie games. There are suddenly people out there that spend more time playing indie games than games published by a major company, and Nintendo released a new console that celebrates its 1-year anniversary with devastatingly bad sales numbers. The Wii U is only 1 year old and Nintendo is already under tremendous pressure. About that time, Nintendo decides to open up for indies more, but the damage is already done. The Wii U never managed to get as many indie releases as the other two consoles did. So there are tons and tons of reasons why the Wii U failed. There's a butchered marketing campaign, there's the thing we'll talk about in a second, there's a bad launch lineup, but there's also the fact that the console just wasn't really attractive for people interested in indie games. Nintendo completely slept on the rising importance of indie gaming, and in my opinion, that is one of the lesser discussed reasons why the Wii U failed so spectacularly. But there is another, lesser discussed reason for the Wii U's failure, and this reason is also our third worst mistake that Nintendo ever made. So before we take a look at this, let's first rank all of my kitchen appliances. So this... What do you mean by that unnecessarily breaks the flow of the video? Maybe another time. So the second, less discussed reason why the Wii U failed spectacularly, and the third worst decision that Nintendo ever made in my humming opinion. This time the year is 2013. So Edward Snowden's NSA leaks are shocking the globe. Apple releases iOS 7, The Wolf of Wall Street runs in the cinemas, and What Does the Fox Say goes viral. And Nintendo just started to claim the ad revenue of YouTubers that uploaded videos containing footage of one of their games. So just to be clear here, we are in a post What Does the Fox Say world. Gangnam Style happened a year ago. Rebecca Black's Friday is merely more than an ancient memory of 2011 at this point. Point being, the internet and its insane marketing potential is already well researched and no secret to nobody. Except for Nintendo, because in 2013 Nintendo started a war against content creators that use footage of their games. It's a war that should go on for several years. Whenever they found a content creator that used footage of any of their games, they filed a complaint and claimed all ad revenue that this video was producing on YouTube. That got so absurd that we ended up in a situation where Nintendo started to claim the ad revenue of content creators that just used a quick scene of one of their games to explain something. If the video wasn't monetized by the creator, then Nintendo added ads to the video themselves. Just to give you an idea of how absurd the situation got at the height of this madness. If content creators planned not to monetize their videos in the first place, but wanted to use some Nintendo footage, then it sometimes happened in certain communities on YouTube that the creator deliberately put footage of, let's say, a Harry Potter movie into the video, because then the video would get claimed by Nintendo and by Warner Brothers, and YouTube wouldn't know which one of the two actually owned the video, which would mean that at least no company was able to earn money off of it. Though in fairness, that was a practice not only used against Nintendo, but against every company that tried to profit off of a creator's work. The point here is that Nintendo wasn't exactly winning compassion awards anywhere. Over the years, tons of established YouTube channels just decided not to bother anymore and quit making Nintendo content altogether. The most prominent of them being this weird Swedish guy called PewDiePie. or something. Meanwhile, smaller content creators had no perspective to ever become an established channel if they solely focused on Nintendo stuff. Basically, Nintendo made a really clear point that they do not want anyone to produce content discussing their games. And the content creators saw it. And they listened. And they thought, okay boomer. All of this starts shortly after the launch of the Wii U, and for whatever mysterious reason, the console isn't selling as Nintendo was hoping it would. So to come to the point here, Nintendo actually managed to make so many content creators angry during this crucial time that people that previously were quite positive and open towards Nintendo started to actively discourage people from buying a Wii U online. People that were playing Mario games with a huge following suddenly only played PS4 games anymore, and the general consensus online towards Nintendo was far more negative than it is today. And then there was also their creators program, their vision for how to deal with content creators, and a system so insultingly bad that no one in their right mind would ever sign that damn thing. So I don't want to talk too much about this program here, since it is not that relevant for the point I want to make, but just to give you an idea, the only way to upload Nintendo footage without getting into trouble required the content creators to hand over half of their earnings to Nintendo. Nintendo, on the other hand, did not only get half the money off of someone else's work, but they also had a veto right on the content. Like, if I were to make this video, they would first watch it, which sometimes took a while, and then decide whether they like it or not. Spoiler alert, they would never have approved this video, and only then I would be allowed to post it. So to put it mildly, the relationship between Nintendo and basically every person producing stuff on YouTube was tense from 2013 to 2018. In my opinion, that is one of the reasons why the Wii U never took off. I don't think it's the name or a bad marketing campaign, though both definitely didn't help. I believe the reason why the Wii U bombed was because Nintendo was actively trying to discourage anyone from buying that thing. Tons of people that had a huge following online did not cover the console. Other internet personalities were actually actively advising against it. The general consensus everywhere was that Nintendo is backwards at best and straight up unlikable at worst. The big launch title, Super Mario Bros. U, is, as much as I love the game, just more of Mario Wii. It takes Nintendo years over years until they have a somewhat decent library of games. They lose tons of third-party support, in part because they never really cared that much for third-party publishers to begin with, and there aren't even many indie games on the platform. They could have run the best marketing campaign in the world. They could have given the console the slickest name. That console would never have sold under the circumstances we just talked about. The first 2 years of the Wii U are just when the mix of incompetence, arrogance and greed that built up during the successful Wii years exploded and almost buried the entire company below it. The thing is, for a major game publisher like Nintendo, their online image is incredibly important. If Nintendo is this weird but cute little company that makes those amazing games that everybody loves in the public perception, then everything is a lot easier for them. But if they're perceived to be this greedy backwards company stuck in the 90s but with 80s server infrastructure that every once in a while makes a decent game, well, then they're shaking the trouble fruit tree. So to come back to the third worst thing Nintendo ever did, in my opinion, is that they actively were pulling people away that were producing positive content about them, leaving only negative voices behind. It's the horrible way they treated content creators up until very recently. They lost millions over millions of dollars in free advertising, while also actively gambling away the little goodwill that they had left during those days. So we stay during the Wii U days for fourth worst decision Nintendo ever made, because the next decision they made is tied to a game that they released during this era, Paper Mario Color Splash to be precise. Paper Mario Color Splash is the fourth worst decision Nintendo ever made in my humble opinion. That one is probably controversial, so hear me out, there's a reason for this. Let's take a look at the history of the Super Paper Mario series in a nutshell. Basically, the first game was released in 2000 and everybody loves it. The game ended up being a huge critical success. The game is followed by Paper Mario and the Thousand-Year Door, a game that tons of people hold in highest regard and a game that was one of my absolutely most memorable childhood games. And then Nintendo apparently felt the need to shake the series up a bit. The Wii entry was a bit lacking. It was still a Paper Mario game and I still enjoyed it tremendously, but a bit of the charm of the early games was gone. And then, well, then they decided to try something completely new again with Paper Mario Sticker Star. And everybody hates it. Like, I don't think that there is a point in talking about Sticker Star and its flaws here. The game is so universally acclaimed to be terrible, like its combat system is designed in a way that actively discourages combat. The game just took so many wrong doors on its path onto the 3DS, it's ridiculous. And then Paper Mario Color Splash followed, and it followed into the footsteps of Sticker Star. The game managed to improve a couple of aspects and there's a decent game hidden in it, but it doesn't even come close to the charm and the sharp design that made the first two games so exceptional. History lesson lesson over and out. So why do I think that Color Splash is a bigger mistake than Sticker Star? So the thing is the following. I hate Sticker Star as much as the next guy, but I don't want to frame it as a tremendous mistake, because with Sticker Star, Nintendo tried something new with the series. It ended up completely failing, but at least it was something new. Nintendo is a company willing to innovate and to try new things with their franchises, and more often than not that leads to way more interesting sequels than we would get if they were to play it safe. But trying to reinvent the wheel so often just has to lead to a failed game every once in a while. And I'm okay with that. I am okay with Nintendo trying something with the Paper Mario series and it not succeeding. What I'm not okay with, however, is if everybody on the planet is feedbacking them that they just released a horrible game and they decide to double down on it. Everyone was feedbacking Nintendo that we do not like the direction the series is taking. Critics hated the game. People were very vocal online that they hated the new direction for the series. The game didn't sell as good as it could have, and I would honestly be surprised if not at least one fan told some executive of Nintendo at some point how much they hate the sequel in person. But instead of listening to the feedback and adjusting the series accordingly, they decided to double down on the systems that made Sticker Star so horrible in the first place. You know, if you are lost, you do not find home by walking into the wrong direction doubly motivated. And it is not just the Paper Mario series. Nintendo has a long and proud history of being completely deaf to feedback voiced by their player base. The reason why I think Color Splash was such a huge mistake is because Color Splash is symptomatic for the much bigger problem of Nintendo simply ignoring the wishes of their fan bases, and of Nintendo being stubborn about things the whole world tells them they're wrong about. It is absolutely okay to take a wrong turn with a series every once in a while, but repeating that mistake, well, that is a disastrous move, in my humble opinion. So let's take a look at the 5th worst decision that Nintendo ever made. So this one probably comes as a surprise to nobody. It's their horrible and tremendously bad community management. So there are hundreds of stories we could take a look at in order to visualize how incredibly bad Nintendo's community management is. But let's take a look at just one today. Let's take a look at their most recent boo-boo. Let's take a look at how they cancelled a major Super Smash Bros. Tournament called the Big House. So most of you probably heard this story by now, so real quick. The event was planned to feature a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Tournament as well as a Super Smash Bros. Melee Tournament. The past couple of years, the tournament took place in a convention center in Detroit. So for those of you watching in the future, we're currently in the middle of a global pandemic. Everyone is encouraged to have as little social contact as possible, and people are pretty much stuck at home. You know, it's like month 10 of the stupid pandemic, and I still haven't found anything that helps with the glasses. Anyway. So there are two things going on at the same time here. The one thing is that there is barely anything going on, and that a big Smash tournament is at least something for a lot of people to look forward to. While it is simply not possible to have dozens or even hundreds of different people from all over the place meet in a convention center. The only way the tournament can take place is as an online stream. And of course that is exactly what they plan on doing. For Ultimate, no problem. But for Melee, well, Melee, that's not that easy. Super Smash Bros. Melee has no online functionality out of the box. Because it's a Nintendo GameCube game. But luckily, our devoted and brave tournament organizers find a solution to this problem. They use a Super Smash Bros. Melee mod called Ceave that adds online functionality to the game. And thus, Nintendo saw them use Ceave, and their fury was limitless, and their reaction was fierce and immediate. Basically, Nintendo sent them a cease and desist letter forcing them to cancel the tournament or being faced with legal action. The argument why Nintendo threatens a bunch of good guys trying to organize a tournament, probably out of their garages, that would even provide Nintendo with free advertisement for the game where the most iconic characters punch each other into the stomach in the middle of a global pandemic is something along those lines. The only way to play Melee online is by modding the game, the only way to mod the game is by using a ROM, and ROMs are always illegal in the eyes of Nintendo's lawyers. So I'm obviously not a legal expert. The little legal knowledge that I actually have is very limited to Switzerland constitutional law. I read a book once, but from a limited understanding, it is not entirely clear if it is forbidden to create a ROM of a game that we own for personal use. So please keep in mind that I'm no expert, but it appears to me that this is a bit of a gray area in need of a court ruling. But you know, even if Nintendo, hypothetically, ends up being in the right here, there is this one question that I just can't get out of my head. Why? Why start bullying people that try to share their enjoyment of a game with others? It's a tournament of one of Nintendo's franchises, you know? Those things have marketing value. That's why companies like Blizzard spend lots of money to have organized leagues for their games. The damage of having a bunch of people play a melee tournament online is so minimal compared to the damage that cancelling this tournament causes. It's the same situation we had at the beginning of the Wii U era. They're acting overly confident again, not caring for how much damage they cause to their own reputation by actively trying to get rid of people that just want to celebrate their games. And this is something that is not only happening to the Smash community. Similar things happen to the Mario Maker community over and over again. They just released a Loveless Mario collection using a very shady business model. They just had streamers banned for playing Age of Calamity before release, even though the game was out where the streamers live. They just often seem to be so concerned about the completely wrong things, not listening to what the people that actually love their games the most are feedbacking them. When thinking about those decisions made by Nintendo recently, I always end up thinking about the Reggie quote we just took a look before. You know, everyone and their mother was screaming at Nintendo that their treatment of indie games is idiotic. And Reggie says, "Yeah, I've seen all the reports and the reaction, but candidly, the reaction is by folks who don't really understand the nature of the comments and don't really understand the nature of the business." He basically says that they do not care about the feedback. It is the same attitude with which they approach the sequel to Sticker Star. Ignore the feedback, we know it better. This comment about how they know better about indie games was made at the height of the Wii's success. Nintendo was in a great situation back then, and only 3 years later, Nintendo already was in insane trouble, to a significant part due to actively stepping onto the shoes of the communities that form around their games, and because they just don't listen. They don't listen to feedback if they take a wrong turn with a series, and even worse, they also don't listen if they alienate a huge part of their fan base, like they just did with the big house tournament. So to close this, the final, most horrible decision that Nintendo made in the past and continues to make is their community management. Nintendo is a really interesting company. They made many brilliant games over the years. Games that brought joy to the lives of millions of people. I mean, the reason why people are so enraged about the Smash tournament is because they love Smash so much in the first place, isn't it? Nintendo made and just continues to make wonderful gaming experiences, but they tend to be incredibly petty about the most stupid of things, and they tend to not notice feedback, not even if people are screaming it right into their face. Alrighty right, so in my humble opinion, the 5 worst decisions Nintendo ever made are the rotating joystick minigames in the original Mario Party, since it is the only design decision that I ever encountered that not only actively encouraged me to hurt myself, but also led to people destroying their own controllers, them completely sleeping on the rising importance of indie games, because I personally believe it is a significant piece of the Wii U's failure puzzle, them actively looking for trouble with pretty much any influencer that even thought about covering their games for almost a decade, because I personally believe that's an even bigger part of the Wii U's failure puzzle. Them doubling down on the catastrophic formula of Sticker Star for a sequel because it is symptomatic for them being deaf to feedback. And finally, the horrible way they handle all the loving communities that form around their games. Because if they only were a bit more chill and attentive, we all could have a so much better time with their games. Hooray! So, honestly, I'm not sure if this is that good of a list. You know, it's missing tons of stupid stuff Nintendo did over the years. Where's the Virtual Boy? Or where's that one time Nintendo actually created PlayStation? Not a single word about how ridiculously bad Nintendo's online functionality is, or about everything that ever happened to Pokemon Go after its release. Not even the story about cartridges. Like, maybe it is just me, but the worst Nintendo's decision video just feels incomplete if the words rare, where aren't dropped at least once. But honestly, what do I know? I mean, it isn't my list or anything, it's actually good Audio Cieve's list. I'm more like a paid actor here, so not trying to cause any drama, but I honestly think he messed this up a bit. The list is fine. So I hope you enjoyed this little video. If you did, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up, and maybe you feel especially like negativity is driving more engagement on YouTube than positivity does today, and want to hit the subscribe button as well. I hope that all of you have a wonderful day, and to see you soon. Goodbye!